This is Shabbos Daf Yud. The last daf we're talking about doing certain things by a lamp, whether you could not kill a lice by the lamp, and now we're going further. Tana Rab Chia taught, Aval Mistakilhu, but if you're just going to look, Ma Shabakais or Ma Shabakara, whatever's in your cup or whatever is in your plate, that you're going to move the lamp on Shabbos. In other words, if you're doing regular daily activities, we're not worried you're going to move the lamp on Shabbos. Is the boy Meimar Shahula Shah? Now, those who say it's because of the time that it takes to do certain things, in other words, if you do it for a short amount of time, you're less likely to move the lamp. There's the boy Meimar Divnei at Hanikias, and others say it's because of cleanliness. So, what's the difference between whether or not it's the time or whether it's Nikias? So, Lekanev Chizarin, it's whether or not you're going to trim lettuce. That takes a very long time, but it's for Nikias. So, Mada Amar Shehul Shaiv, you can say it's for time, also then it's usher, because it takes a very long time. Umada Amar Ifnei Hanikias, Ifnei Hasakana, maybe because of Nikias, because of Sakana, or because of Kashrus, Mutter, then it's Mutter. Rabbi Yirmiyah Salak Lagabe Ravsi. Rabbi Yirmiyah went to visit Ravasi. So Mizag Le Kasa. So then he mixed up a cup for him of wine. Back then the wines were very, very strong. They had to dilute it and they had to mix it. Shrei Masakil Bey, and he started looking at it. Samarle B'nei Beisa. So then his wife said to him, Chamei Mahu Avid, what is he doing? Amarle, so he said to her, Dehu Noyheg B'shtei Rabbi. He is Noyheg of the Shita of Rabbi. The Tani Rav Chia learned, you're allowed to look what's in your plate, what's in your cup, and you're not chayshesh. So when you're doing normal things, eating and drinking, and doing normal activities, you don't have to worry about moving it. It's only when you're doing something very particular, something when you need to see something very small, something when you want to read something very small, that's when you're chayshesh, because then the lamps, if you could see in my background, basically oil lamps would feed into a part where the wick was, and you want to tilt it and feed more oil, maybe it would illuminate it. Now we're going to see the Gemara is going to really tell us about everyday lamps. I'm not saying everyday electricity necessarily is exactly like lighting a fire, because electricity is not lighting a fire. And I know that I treat this and try to say exactly what electricity is, but let's say, for argument's sake, electricity is actually malacha. You're doing something because, something that's microscopic, something you can't even see doing, all of a sudden that's, usually when that's not considered a malacha. Let's say something like electricity, even though you can't see it, even though it's microscopic. So let's say for some reason turning on the lamp is malacha, especially these days when you're no longer even heating up an element. And first of all, by the way, we know when we're going to learn the halachas of fire, we know that it's eish. It's a wood burning fire, gas burning fire, charcoal burning fire. It's not just heating things up. For instance, it's not heating up from shemesh. It's not heating up things from the heat of the ground, etc., etc. So let's say turning on a lamp. And these days, LEDs and even fluorescents, they don't really heat up, so it's not fire. So what is it? Okay, regardless, let's push it on the side. Let's say turning on a light is a malacha. For sure, it's definitely something that should not be done on Shabbos, because it's for sure muksa, it's for sure a malachta should do b'chayil. That's for sure. It's a weekday thing, and don't do it. However, let's say it's actual malacha. Okay? Then the question is going to be is, how close are you going to get to a light? Now, of course, we know this light is not fire. We know it's not the same thing, but it's similar, because a person might be reading and he might have a dimmer, or the person might only have one light on and he wants another light on. He might be in a part of the room where there's no light and he might want a light on. So now we're going to get to the Gemara after all that little introduction, and it's going to maybe give some application for these days. Let's see. You cannot read by the light of a ner. Shmuel says, they only said it for the one person, right? There's two people, so one of them is going to protest against the other one, so it's mutter. Masnisa pligi alay. But there's a brayso with Shmuel that argues on it. So whether there's a nair that he can tilt, the echad nair she'eina yachol lahatoisai, or a nair that he's not able to tilt. In other words, it's either attached to the ground or it's very big. He's not able to tilt it, or it's a candle, and a candle you can't tilt. What's the point of tilting a candle? Ula bar Yishmael b'shem Ravlar, Ula b'shem Sholazar, that afilu kama. So even if several people there, it's still not good. El Daita to Rabbi Lazar, and according to the view of Rabbi Lazar, afilu gavoya kama. Even if it's very high and you can't reach it. Afilu nasun beis acher. Even if it's in another room. In other words, it's in someone else's house and you're reading from your window from his light. Afilu nasnai bis pilka, even if it's placed inside a glass case, and you're gonna have to remove the glass case. You can't remove the glass case to get to it. So, in other words, in all these cases, and I don't know why to say so many, but the point is, if you can't get to it to tilt it, you're still not allowed to use a lamp. Why can't you still use a lamp if you cannot get to it? There's no shash that you're gonna do malach on Shabbos. So the answer obviously is gonna be, because even though this lamp you think you can't tilt, but you're gonna get used to reading by lamps, and then you're going to read by a lamp that you could tilt, and all of a sudden it's going to be a problem. So let's try to have this application, let's say to flushing lights. Again, assuming it's a malacha, assuming turning on, it's some sort of malacha onto a light. So you set your timers, you cover your switches and all the other stuff. Are you allowed to read by the light of by light? Can you read by light? Assuming it's a malacha, assuming you covered your switches, you did everything you're supposed to be doing, and you have all these things. So is it going to come a situation where you read this light, you're not going to tilt, but other lights you are going to tilt? And the answer is no, because the bottom line is lights don't work that way. There isn't going to become a light where you're going to have to tilt in order to make it work. It may be a situation where you come from a dimmer and then you can move the dimmer. I understand that, but it's a rare situation. Usually it's either the light is off or the light is on. So we're not choishish that a person's going to light a light on Shabbos. We're choishish that he's going to try to make the light better. So you'll never be in a situation with electric lights, really you'll never be in a situation where all of a sudden, this one, because the light switch is covered and you can't dim it, so therefore you're not going to dim, where all of a sudden you see another one where you think you could dim. So therefore the application is not going to be spread, and therefore go ahead, set your lights in Shabbos, read, learn, but please, obviously, no things that are inappropriate for Shabbos. A great thing to read on Shabbos always is Ma'amar Mordechai. I recommend it. Tani, we learned in the Brisa, Shema Yishach V'yeta. Let's say he forgets and he's going to tilt it, okay? So, Amar Shmuel says, Ani Ekra V'layeta. I could read and I won't forget. V'shachach, and he's reading and he forgot. V'aya Kar L'hata, he said he came very close to tilting it. V'amar, they said, G'doilim, hein, Divrei Chamim. How great are the words of the sages. Sh'amru Shema Yishach V'yeta. They said, lest you forget and you might want to tilt it. Rabbi Nassan says, Hayito Aisha Mama, she actually did tilt it because of Al Pinkasai Amar, and he wrote in his little notebook in his journal, Yishmael ben Elisha, Hita Haner b'Shabbos. Yishmael ben Elisha tilted there on Shabbos. Lech Sheyevne Beis Hamikdash Yehei Chayev Chatas. When the Beis Hamikdash is built, he's going to be Chayev Chatas. So we learned a couple things. One, we learned it's unbelievable that the Cheshbonis that Chachamim have themselves, even a very small Averis. And the second, we also learn that obviously even a chacham, a tam chacham, a chavir, someone who's an expert, anyone could forget, anyone could make a mistake. And the third thing we learn is that apparently, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he held that after Tchias HaMeisim, or maybe he was felt like there was maybe it's possible in his life, he's going to see Mashiach, and that he's going to be Chaya, and he's going to be Chaya b'chatos. So even though you're in Galus, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he holds that your Chai B'chatos and Golus, you're still going to have to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash when the Beis HaMikdash is built. I'm not sure if he meant maybe in his lifetime or maybe even after Chai Beis, I'm not really sure. Tanan Tanina. We learned elsewhere in the Mishnah, Al ta'amein ba'atzmecha al yoyim b'moisai. Do not believe in yourself. Don't trust yourself that you are so above doing Averis even until the day you die. Maisa b'chasid amar echad. It happened with one chasid. Shahaya yoyshei b'shaynem, that he would sit and he would read. Al ta'amein ba'atzmecha ad yoyim z'knoscha. Do not believe in yourself until your old age. Yoyim ani. Just like me, achas chada ruach v'nas yisei. Your spirit who came over to test me. Usrei tehei bei, and I began to feel remorse. Amrlei ruach amrlei. So the spirit says to me, loitz tatituz. Do not be distressed. Ruachana, I am a spirit. Azil ve'eshtrei lechavrech. Go and acquaint yourself to all your colleagues. Do not assume that you are more protected than they are. In other words, everyone should always just watch out for themselves. B'yemes a chazan raya eichan chatunoikis kairin. In truth, a chazan is able to read from what the lamps of children are reading. So the Gemara is going to explain this. Amar Rav Lazar says, Kamakam Shashinu be'emes. Every time it says emes, halacha Moshe b'Sinai, that indicates halacha Moshe b'Sinai. Ma misasek. What does he prepare for himself when he's glancing over at the lamp that the children are reading from? Rashi Parakim Psukim. He's reading the beginning of all of the chapters. Tani, we learned in a brisa. Rabshim Gamliel says, "Hatinoikis Moskidu Lahen Rosh Psuken Lar Haner." The children and the teacher are preparing them for the beginning of the verses of the light of the Ner. My Kedoim. So what now? What's the difference between they're allowed to do it and the adults not allowed to do it? So Yilabahem people Baitzina. The children have the lamp go out. They don't really care about that because then they get to stop doing their homework. The Elula by Ditpei Baitzina. He does not want the lamp to go out. And therefore, he's going to tilt the lamp and try to make sure the lamp keeps going. Whereas children, if the lamp goes out, yay, we have recess and we go home. Now, the end of the Mishnah says that you should always protect yourself from sin, including a zav should not eat with a zava. Tani, we learned in a brisa. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, "Re'eim ad eicha parza tahara." See what extent the ritual purity has proliferated. Parza in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar. What does parza mean? Ma at asher hayilcha lifnei v'yifroitz l'ray, because the little that you had came proliferated me greatly. Or it says also, Beis Avaisa, it was Sehem parza l'ray. The house of the forefathers proliferated greatly. And this is both from Bereshis and from DYY. So we see the word parza means proliferated. So he says, how great is it that the strict observance of Tumat Tahara has proliferated among Bnei Yisrael. Shalai goes to Mark for not decree saying Shalai Yechal Tahar im Tameya, that a Tahar should not with Tameya. Ella Amru. Only says La Yechal Azav Im Hazava, only with Azav and Hazava. So let's see. If it said, like for instance, a husband and wife, right? So he's Tahar and she's Tameh. So first of all, in the time when they are worried about Tumat Tahara, he's not going to want to eat of her food because she's Tameh and he's not going to want to make himself Tameh. Let's say even if not in that situation. The situation after the Beis HaMikdash, where we're not worried about that. So in that situation, he knows that there's a logical conclusion to her Tameya. Therefore, the Gzeira was not for him. Whereas here we have a situation where both of them are Tameh. So when it comes to the fact that the food is Tameh, it makes a difference because your food's Tameh, my food's Tameh. So that's why we have the Gzeira. Also, we're saying, Kal v'chaimer, even a situation where I'm Tameh and you're Tameh, I know I can't. And I know you can't. You know you can't, and you know I can't. In that situation, they still made a gzeira to still not eat together, to still make sure that there shouldn't be any sort of cohabitation with each other. Kal v'chaimer, when it comes to a situation where one of them is tahar, one of them is tameh, I'm tahar, so I think I can. I know that you can't. You know that you can't, but you think I can. It's less of a deterrent, and that situation, so Kal v'chaimer, for sure there should be safeguards, and yet they still made the safeguards by the Zava. The Zava, how great is it that we watch out for Tumat Tahara by even in that situation where it's even so less likely to happen because I know I can't and I know you can't, you know you can't, and you know I can't, yet they still made the Gzeira. A Zav im mitzoras mutter. A Zav may eat with a mitzoras. A mitzoras does not have to stay in her tent. A mitzora has to stay in his tent, but a mitzoras do not have to stay in her tent. So a Zav and a mitzoras may eat together. The Yasha mechutz la'ayla, because again he has to build in his tent a mitzora. But she does not have to go out of her tent. Mitzora im zava aser, but a mitzora, a male mitzora with a zava cannot, and a tzora, a male mitzora im mitzoras aser, and also they can't because they're the same. Now again, the gzeiros are like this: when they're the same, so then it seems like, one second, I'm tummy anyway, you're tummy anyway, we can't do anything worse than make each other tummy, therefore we have to make a gzera. When he's a mitzora, means an undetermined amount of time, and she's a zava for a short amount of time, so then it's still usher, because I'm an undetermined amount of time, therefore I can't wait. You're a certain short of time, maybe you could wait, but I can't wait because I'm an indeterminate amount of time. Even though zava's a long time, it's still determinate, but I'm indeterminate, and therefore they have to make the gzera. However, a mitzora, a zav, a person knows he has a certain amount of time. With the mitzorah, someone who has an indeterminate amount of time, so he's going to say, one second, you know what, in this situation, I have a certain amount of time, and by the way, I'm going to come to her. You, however, have indeterminate amount of time, you're going to say Tomei, so I'm not going to risk making myself Tomei for you. Tani, the Brisa teaches, Beishamli says, La yechel zav purush im zav am haaretz. A zav who is scrupulous should not eat with a zav who's am haaretz. Beishamli matter, Beishamli says matter. Why? My time, Beishamli. What's the reason why Beishamli says zav? This one zav, this one zav. Matter. Beishamli. And what's the reason Beishamli? Shehum zraga limai maybe talk masayim. So if they frequent each other to go ahead and eat themselves when there's tamei, hum zraga limai be made tahara. They're also going to go and eat themselves in the days when they are tahar. Rav Chia Ruba Faked L'Rav. Rav Chia of the great has instructed Rav in at Yachil Mechoil Koil Shatza Chulan B'Taharas Eichel. If you can eat chulin in Tara all year long, then go ahead and eat chul tahara all year long, v'blav. But if not, make sure that you're at least tahar tehei achil shivas yam yimei min shasa. At least 7 days of the year, that is between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Why not including Rosh Hashanah itself? Okay. Question, tzarachin. But at least, the very least, that a person should be tar, so between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and there's a Seismei Tshuva, try to eat, be tar and eat chul then. Mikan haya Rab Pinchas ben Yair. Rab Pinchas ben Yair said like this: Zridas mevia l'dei nikias. Diligence brings to kindness. Nikias mevia l'dei tara. Kindness brings to purity. Tahara mevia l'dei kedusha. Purity brings to holiness. Kedusha l'dei anava. Holiness brings to humility. Anava l'dei yiras. Humility brings to the fear of sin. Yiras. The fear of sin comes to divine inspiration. Divine inspiration. Chassidus brings to piety. Chassidus lidei tchias amesim. Piety brings you to tchias amesim, and tchias amesim lidei Eliyahu Zachor Toiv, and tchias amesim brings you to Eliyahu Zachor Toiv. Zrizos lidei tchias. Zrizos brings you diligence. Why it says has v'chila, and he finished, which means he was diligent in the process of atoning for the Beis Hamikdash, for the Mishkan in the Ohel Moed, the Chiper, and then the Hashem atoned for him. So therefore, you see that scrupulousness brings you to atonement. Nikias lidei tahara. So atonement, cleanliness brings you to purity. V'chiper alah v'kayin of tahara. When the kayin atones for him, when he is nikiyim, then right, that's what we're trying to equate chiper to nikiyim. So then he gets purified. Tahara lidei kedusha, and Tahara brings kedusha. Tahara kedusha, because the pasuk says that you should be pure and you should be holy. Kedusha lidei anava, and holiness brings you to anava. Ki kayama ram v'niso shaychainad v'kadosh ma'im aroim v'kadosh yashkoin v'yazdakash v'al and thus said Hashem, the Holy One, above the one that who abides forever, and whose name is holy. I abide in exalted holiness with the despondent and the lowly spirits. So therefore, I'm holy, and I go with those who are lowly spirits. Another, so holiness leads to another. Another day yiras. Another goes to the fear of sin. The Chassidus says, another yiras Hashem. The result of humility is the fear of Hashem. Lazar says, just as wisdom made a crown of a person's head, also another ekev. Humility also makes a sandal for the person, for his written. So in other words, he's using the pasuk for something else. He's saying, just like you can wear another, but you wear it on your foot, and how do you wear it on your foot? Because the beginning of wisdom is fear of Hashem, and the result of another is the fear of Hashem. So if you're going to raise if you on your head is going to be the Yiras Hashem, so then on your foot is going to be Ekev, near the foot, the heel is going to be another.